Webinar Wednesday session. We are here to discuss a topic that is increasingly shaping our world and the way we do business, ESG. I am your host, Audra Mitchell, Vice President of Group Learning and Development and General Manager for the Massey Learning Institute. And it is always a pleasure hosting these sessions with you, our Massey family. So today's webinar is entitled the ESG Journey, Measuring Our Impact. And it is actually a follow-up to our first ESG session, which was held on June the 20th, 2023, just about 1 year ago, where in that session we introduced ESG and its relevance to Massey. So if you missed that first session, we encourage you to ensure that you view it because you need to get caught up. We will actually drop a link in the chat here today, which you can copy, or you can go to our MLI website or YouTube channel for this and our other webinars and programs. So as we get into this, we want to remind you that ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance factors, and they are crucial in measuring the sustainability and societal impact of an investment in a company or business. In today's world, ESG factors are playing a significant role in investment decisions. Companies with strong ESG profiles may be better positioned for future challenges and experiences, as well as fewer instances of bribery, corruption, and fraud. Moreover, embracing ESG principles can help companies find new business opportunities, and it can drive customer engagement and loyalty. So you're going to hear some more about this. At this point in time, we really want to thank you for joining us. And just to let you know that as we begin this journey, this session, today you will not only learn about our ESG journey, but about Massey's equivalent ESG journey over the years, which interestingly has been guided by our philosophy regarding the way we do business. And you'll hear some more about this later on. As we go into our webinar, you are reminded to participate by posting your questions and comments so that we can have an engaging session. And as usual, a recording of this webinar will be made available post-webinar, and you can find that on our MLI YouTube channel or our Massey Learning Institute website. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, without further ado, let me welcome and introduce today's speaker, Mrs. Katrina Legaza-Aliong, Massey's Limited's Communications and Special Projects Manager, who is actively involved in this project along with other Massey colleagues as we work to drive and embed ESG within our organizations. Katrina, good morning and welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hi Audra, thank you for having me, and thank you to the whole MLI team for always making space for learning and collaboration and having me on today. So today we're here to discuss ESG. ESG is a journey, an evolving journey that the entire world has embarked on. But ESG is a multidisciplinary journey. And today I really want to encourage all of you to become part of the co-creation of ESG strategy and initiatives for Massey, as Massey does it in Massey's way. And so as we start, what does ESG stand for? And many of you would have heard about ESG, some may not have. And so we just really wanted to start at the very beginning. And so ESG offers a framework for analyzing companies' ability for incorporating sustainable practices into their operations. It's a compliance-based mechanism for measurement of our impact. And so in Massey, we really believe that ESG is within our DNA. It has been part of our legacy from inception. E being a responsibility to our environment. S, social responsibility. G, accountability in our practices and governance. So as we begin discussing Massey's legacy of ESG and the way forward, we just want to start with a video.
What I truly care about is impacting the world one person at a time, empowering them, transforming them, having them see the world differently, giving them hope and giving them encouragement. When I think of Massey, I see us as an ecosystem. 12,000 amazing employees, our customers, our suppliers, our entrepreneurs, all the people that we serve through our products and our services, and all those who serve us, so those who we contribute to their lives. So Massey is for me more than a brand, it is people.
Good morning, Claudia. How are you
Good
doing?
morning, Miss Fonzo. Great, thank you.
Growing up, pocket money was always fixed for school, but my appetite for snow cones and pillory and all of those delicacies was never fixed. So I had to find ways to address that. And, getting out of class early, joining the cafeteria line and charging others who came out of class later fee to buy their lunch for them. And so that's I guess was my first lessons in business. That's where I learned about markup and margin and receivables and payables, and not aware of it at the time, but I guess that was my introduction to business. I think life is a university, and free university, and all you have to do to attend is just be present and to be receptive to the fact that no matter the position you hold or what you think you know, there's always more to be learned.
I care about people. I care about my impact on people. ESG is an acronym that stands for Environmental Stewardship, Social Responsibility, and Corporate Governance. It's a term that the regulators use to ask corporations across the globe to care. Now, this has been a journey that Massey has been on for a very long time, for decades. It's in our DNA, caring about our people, caring about our planet. And we see this through the lens of our purpose, who we are. The C stands for our commitment to our customers and our communities. The A stands for the accountability in our governance practices. The R stands for the responsibility to our environment. And the E stands for our support and empathy for our employees. It's more meaningful to us this way because we genuinely care. We believe that the regulators, as much as they try, they cannot force companies to care. Caring lives in the hearts of people. And Massey has been on this journey for decades, not because we ESG, it's because we CARE. And we want a culture of care because we also want to build and leave a legacy of caring. And the Forces for Good campaign last year, when we celebrated our 100th anniversary, was a great example of this, where employees across the entire group, across all regions, came together to nominate and vote on charities, on projects that would help their various communities. It was overwhelming.
Hello.
Hey, welcome back, welcome back.
As a cancer survivor, I have learned to love and live every day. I have learned to smile. I have learned to embrace opportunities. Massey has one of the most effective EAP, which means Employee Assistance Programs. It is a program that is designed to support staff not just in the time of need. It is also a proactive support system that supports emotional, psychological, financial, and many other areas of our well-being tool.
I have always had a passion for numbers, controls, finance, and simply doing what is right. I live by Mahatma Gandhi's quote, "Be the change you want to see in this world." I lead a team of extremely committed and talented professionals who are like-minded in the tenets of good governance, strong controls, and proactively managing our risk.
Across the region, Massey continues to do its part to promote environment-friendly initiatives. Several years ago, we led the charge with the Massey bag, which are now iconic, and those bags reduce the plastic that goes into our oceans, our landfills. Family means everything to me. I have 4 children. I have 2 grandchildren. Hopefully, I'll get a few more, not children, but the grandchildren. And leaving them a livable world is important to me.
The care that we're doing now, it's just the next natural progression of how we've always operated. And as an organization, like any organization, we're not perfect, but we're listening, we're journeying, we're growing, and we're committed to really making a difference. That's what I love about Massey.
We have to continue to learn, unlearn, and relearn, and be committed to that.
This is an opportunity to become even stronger over the next 100 years.
The next 100 years starts now.
Yeah, we did it, we did it.
Great. That video always brings a smile to my face. As Wendy references, caring is what Massey does, and it has done from inception. And so that's why our values of love and care have defined what ESG, our culture of ESG, from inception, before the acronym of ESG was even coming into existence. And so we want to take this opportunity to look back at some of the legacy elements which were integrated from inception. And this is why we believe that ESG is really in our DNA for over 101 years. So in 1923, we start with Charles Massey talking about our greatest resource is our people. So focus on responsibility around placing people first, governance, and the environment has really existed along generations, across generations, who have contributed to a lot of these initiatives being implemented across time and across regions and territories as Massey has grown throughout the decades. In 1958, when Massey goes public for the first time by issuing 250,000 shares. In the 1970s, as the group profit sharing and employees are able to now own Massey shares, an important landmark element. The Trinidad Massey Foundation being formed in 1979 before the SDGs were even created. In the 1980s, with executive meetings, MFR established to ensure regular financial reporting, internal audit, which was actually in existence from the 70s, but is referenced here in the 80s as well. 1988, the Massey All-Stars, the signing of the sponsorship for the first time of the Massey All-Stars, a really landmark element as well. Between 1988 and the year 2000, with risk management frameworks, annual compliance training, code of ethics being refreshed, and speak-up policies, and the listing on the Jamaica Stock Exchange later on. As we progress along our timeline, we have the naming of the Barbados Foundation, Massey Foundation, the establishment of the Massey Learning Institute, and important elements with the preventative care initiative, the provision for EAP, the starting of the webinars that we are now part of, and many other frameworks. Nudge coming into existence in 1921, and in 1923, when Massey celebrated its centennial, the Hour 100 and the launch of the Forces for Good, which was piloted as an initiative in which all Massey employees were given the opportunity to take part in nominating projects, that community projects in their regions to receive Massey Forces for Good grants, which were then voted on and grants given out. The Massey's new vision, and then, of course, as we moved into 2024, the ESG care framework. Care being the word to represent the way in which ESG is integrated into Massey culture. And so it's an important journey and a legacy which we're very proud of. As we look at our legacy, we now want to look at how ESG, the legacy of the formation of ESG. And so we just want to look back to 2000, which was really a landmark element, where the United Nations hosted world leaders in New York at the Millennium Summit to discuss their evolving role in the new millennium. Following the summit, the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, were created, outlining 8 international development goals to be achieved by 2015. That same year, the Carbon Disclosure Project, the CDP, was founded. And so these are the MDGs which were established looking at goals for 2015. In 2004, we had the appearance or the initiation of the ESG acronym, with the Who Cares report that illustrated how to integrate ESG factors into companies' operations, breaking down the concept into its 3 basic components: environmental, social, and governance. In the decades that follow, more principles and frameworks were created and evolved, which is still an ongoing exercise. In 2012, the Millennium Development Goals were superseded by the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So the Sustainable Development Goals were born at the United Nations Conference on Sustainability Development in Rio de Janeiro in 2012. The UNDP has a powerful video which explains the outcomes from the Millennium Development Goals, which made extreme progress in many areas, and then was superseded by the SDGs. And so I just want to play this video because I think it's really powerful.
In the year 2000, leaders from 189 countries agreed on a vision for the new millennium. They wanted to end extreme poverty in all of its forms. So they made a list of 8 goals called the Millennium Development Goals, and they wanted to achieve these goals in 15 years. One of the leading organizations working to fulfill these goals has been the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. We're present in more than 170 countries and territories. We championed the goals so that people everywhere would know what they were and how people could do their part. We funded projects that helped fulfill the goals. We helped countries accelerate MDG progress by breaking down the silos and working across sectors. We acted as scorekeeper, helping countries to track progress. As a result, the number of people that live on less than $1.25 per day has dropped by more than half. The number of primary school-age kids who don't go to school, down by almost half. The number of people getting life-saving treatment for HIV increased by over 15 times. Child mortality, down by almost half. As much progress as we have made together, there's still a lot more to do. Over 800 million people are still living on less than $1.25 a day. 1 in 9 people on our planet goes to sleep hungry each night. Deforestation remains alarmingly high in many countries. Oceans are becoming more acidic, threatening food security and marine ecosystems. And about 1 of every 6 adults in the world is illiterate. 2/3 of them are women. We think those are tough numbers, and so do leaders from the countries where we work. So in September 2015, they agreed on a new set of goals to help finish the work we all started in 2000. The new goals are called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. We have made significant progress in the last 15 years, and we think there's plenty of room for hope, for action in the next 15 years. Today, the world is more connected by technology. We know more about how to balance the 3 pillars of sustainable development: social progress, economic growth, and environmental protection. However, our climate is changing. Our planet is transforming, and there are more people on Earth than ever before. We at UNDP believe everyone can have enough of what they need, living within our planetary boundaries, and we are working around the world to make this happen. Our goals to reach by 2030 are to eradicate extreme poverty, protect our environment, and much more. UNDP has 50 years of experience working with countries to make this a more prosperous, healthy, inclusive, and sustainable world. Join us.
I'm going back on. Great. So in 2015, to tackle climate change and its negative impacts, world leaders at the United Nations Change Conference in Paris reached a breakthrough on the 12th of December 2015, the Paris Climate Agreement. Every region in which Massey operates has signed on to the Paris Climate Agreement in one form or another, with setting targets and transition goals as they move towards this. The key elements of the Paris Agreement: to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, review countries' commitments to cutting emissions every 5 years, and provide climate finance to developing countries. ESG and our impact within each of our operating regions is important, and our contributions to having each territory meet its goals is critical to us. ESG's regulatory landscape is evolving. It's an evolving ecosystem as the world comes to terms with codification of this framework. And so in different parts of the world, there are different regulatory agencies, and even those are evolving as we speak. And so these are some of the terms and some of the agencies which you may have heard of and will hear of, with the IFRS being at the center. In 2023, the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, published its inaugural set of sustainability disclosure standards, IFRS 1 and IFRS 2, on June 26, 2023. Companies that prioritize ESG factors in their operations and strategies in alignment with SDG targets contribute to the achievement of SDG goals and the meeting of the Paris Climate Agreement, goals set by countries in which they operate. CARE is Massey's culture around ESG. As we look at the journey and the path of evolving our ESG strategy, these are the steps which we are following. Baseline data collection and identification of gaps, benchmarking against peers, the compiling of lists of material issues through horizon scanning, identify stakeholders and the conduction of the voice of the stakeholder, refining material topics, defining aspirations, defining our management approach, allocating resources, monitoring performance, and reporting, with stakeholders, with your voice being an important part of this process. You will hear more about the voice of the stakeholder, but it's an opportunity for employees, investors, customers and our partners within the region, our suppliers, to become part of the evolution of our ESG strategy. And so I encourage you to have your voice heard, to be part of the process. As we look at what baselining looks like, as we continue our baselining process across the group, we are collecting data across these ESG data points. So these are some of the data points which you may hear of, which you may have to interact with as we go along our journey. So environmental, the greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, material use, waste and circularity, biodiversity, our sort of role in biodiversity and ecosystems, impact, water use and water stewardship, physical impacts on climate change. And so these are some of the topics under ESG, out of which metrics are created for reporting and baseline collection. Under S, we know about leadership behavior, communications and connection, human resources, holistic well-being, learning and development, community engagement, investment, volunteerism and impact, product quality, labeling and impact, access and affordability, procurement practices that support local businesses. And under G for governance, business ethics, governance structure and engagement, incident and risk management, external position and advocacy, supply engagement and impact across the value chain, and competitive behavior. As we look further as to what baselining might look like, from these ESG topics, we then create metrics specific to each topic with unit alignment on units of measure, categories, and codification of definitions. And so this is a look at what, using SASB's disclosure topics and metrics for guidance, what baselining collation of data might look like and does look like. So as we look at the next step in the process beyond baselining and we look at materiality, the World Economic Forum has identified the following. ESG risks are taken into account in order to build resilience for the future. And the global risks in the short and long term, which the World Economic Forum has identified, are shown here. With, as you can see, between the short and long term, climate topics and disclosures becoming more prominent in the long term. Misinformation, extreme weather events, societal polarization, cybersecurity, interstate armed conflict, lack of economic opportunity, inflation, involuntary migration, economic downturn, and pollution being the short-term risks to the globe. These are all as you can see, the top topics are all part of ESG disclosures. In the long term, it is then converted into the long term being a 10-year plan. Extreme weather events, critical change to Earth systems, biodiversity loss and ecosystems collapse, natural resource shortages, misinformation and disinformation, adverse outcomes of AI technologies, involuntary migration, cybersecurity, societal polarization, and pollution. But how do we assess the risks that we see directly impacting us? This is where the materiality exercise and the process really takes into account the risks to the business, as seen by all stakeholders. So the first step in materiality is identifying and classifying material topics. Topics are identified by the portfolios who assess the ESG topics from the angle of mid to long-term positive impact on value creation to the business. These are then the second step is assessing the topics from the perspective of the stakeholders. So this is where the voice of the stakeholders is critical in identifying the topics material to the business. So the priorities of employees, investors, partners, and customers are then assessed. And then this is all mapped to identify the most important topics. And this is what an ESG materiality mapping might look like, with the top right quadrant being the topics material mapped across the business and across the stakeholder priorities. So ESG strategy is an amalgam of the stakeholders' voices, the business voices coming together. So beyond baselining and data collection, how is ESG integrated throughout the organization? Anchoring ESG is an integral part of corporate culture, creating new capabilities, roles, and responsibilities, ensuring products and services are aligned with future demand. Adaptation of business processes, management of data requirements and data flows, and setting up policies. Further development of IT systems for ESG data monitoring and reporting. Internal and external reporting on ESG strategies, risks, and impacts. Integration of ESG issues and data into decision making. Identifying, prioritizing, and integrating material ESG topics into the corporate strategy. Integrating requirements into guidelines and risk management, ensuring compliance with applicable regulatory standards and frameworks. And so this is where we would like to take the opportunity for you to have your voice in this process, in this webinar today. And there'll be lots of other opportunities, but we thought we would have a little poll today. So you should see it pop up. And we'll show the results at the end. Right. So there's one question. And so while you're doing that, what is your role in ESG? So we all have a role in ESG in our day-to-day activities, and I encourage you to take part in your ESG committees within your portfolios and business units. But in our everyday actions, there are many ESG initiatives. Employees are the catalyst for positive impact throughout the organization. So these are just a couple that we have listed here. So E, environmental initiatives, energy conservation, adapting energy savings practices such as turning lights off and equipment when not in use, optimizing cooling systems, promoting the use of energy efficient technology. Waste reduction. We've seen throughout the organization employee-led initiatives that now implement waste reduction, recycling programs, encouraging proper waste regeneration, composting, and usable packaging options. Sustainable practices such as reducing paper usage, switching to eco-friendly products, promoting sustainable procurement practices. S, social initiatives, community engagement, actively participating in volunteering activities, community service projects, and corporate social responsibility. And of course, forces for good. Employee well-being, Wellness champions promote holistic well-being in the workplace, advocating for holistic wellness programs. Governance, ethical conduct, employees uphold ethical standards and integrity in business dealings. Transparency and accountability. So there's lots of opportunities for collaboration across the group and for co-creation. We'd love to show, are we ready to show some results? Yeah. Great, thank you so much. It's always with social being ahead, but for those of you who have not social, environmental, and governance, and so really like understanding our priorities, please you look out for voice of stakeholder, focus groups, take part, surveys coming your way as we break it down into the ESG topics, which you had seen in the framework earlier, so that you can identify and distinguish the priorities which are important to you within the business. And so as we talk about ESG and it being integral within Massey's culture, an example of ESG in action is the Forces for Good from the S dimension metrics. The Forces for Good initiative, which was piloted last year, is now in its second round with over 180 nominated projects from across 8 regions. We're about to start in 7 days. Voting will start, and so I encourage you to go to masseyforcesforgood.com. You'll be able to, in 7 days, look at all the projects that were nominated across every Massey region and vote for a project within your region which you would like to receive a grant. But also vote for a project from across any region to receive a People's Choice grant. And so this is a great opportunity to engage in an ESG initiative, which is regional, connecting all of us together and impacting each of our communities. Another ESG initiative, which is launching on Monday with our pilot phase launch, is the My Pulse. So My Pulse has been a years-long project over multiple years in which Massey has collaborated with Virgin to create a platform for holistic well-being, accessible from your phone, from the web, at any time, 24/7 to you for self-care on your terms, at your pace. And so this will be launched in a phased approach. It will be open to all employees, with the first phase with our champions launch starting on Monday, and then other phase launches. So I encourage you that if you want to be part of one of the phases of the launch, if you want to be onboarded, to please reach out to your wellness champions in your divisions, in your portfolios, and your HR community, so that we can make sure that you are part of this. And so I'm just going to play a little video so you can know a little bit more about this.
Start over. My name is Amanda McMillan. I'm the Vice President, Group Wellness and Benefits.
I'm Ambika Mongrou, SVP for Massey Integrated Retail Portfolio. Sorry.
The Massey Pulse Wellness Initiative is an initiative that is geared towards a culture change within the Massey Group that speaks and walks the talk of wellness and well-being. My Pulse is an online tool that is accessible on your desktop and as an app that will facilitate the Massey Pulse initiative.
As we take charge of our own health in Massey, My Pulse will actually support 24/7 well-being of you, our employees. It can be accessed in all 8 countries, in fact, everywhere.
So this is just another tool that we have introduced to you. It's another layer of support, as if I would say. It's about how do we self-care.
The accessibility, the flexibility it allows, the personalization to each and every one of you really would drive home you, the employee, leading your well-being.
If you're wondering, how are you going to start this wellness journey? How are you going to use this platform? How are you going to navigate around it? Don't worry, your wellness champions are going to be there with you. So rest assured, your personal data and everything about you that needs to be into the platform will remain confidential to you.
There is no Massey without you, but we need to lead by example. We need to own this wellness journey. Let's get this journey started with My Pulse.
And join our community of wellness champions. My Pulse is about Massey Pulse, an overarching initiative to build a culture of holistic well-being within every Massey community. And so let's all be part of it. Thank you so much, Audra.
Thank you, Katrina. So much amazing information. I am sure, just like many of you, you would have learned a lot, in terms of what was shared here. All right, so I do encourage you to, in addition to this, do your own research as well, read up, because it is coming, all right? But as Katrina said, the good news is that over the years of our journey, we've been doing this. It's in the DNA of who we are as Massey. So we're just going to get a little stronger, and we're going to certainly explore the opportunities for growth and to strengthen us where we may be a little bit behind, right? So what we're going to do now, we're going to get into our Q&A, and so I'm going to start off with a comment. So we had a comment here from Julie that shared, I'm so proud that Massey stores introduced reusable bags before it was mandated. We got criticism, but it was the right thing to do and really is iconic. And Julie is quite right. Many of us could agree to, when we went to that, we did get some flack. But I mean, no matter what country you go to, you see customers and you see people walking very proudly with their Massey bag, their reusable bags, right? So again, it was great that we stepped into that space and made that bold move and stuck through it despite the feedback, because it is the right thing to do on the sustainability path. So another question we have was, would we be sharing the presentation? And that is a resounding yes. We will be sharing the presentation. So we love that question, because it means you're going to go back over it, and read up in it and get the information we shared. So as we continue along, I have a question here. So Katrina, the question is, do we have an idea of the potential financial benefit of adapting or adopting ESG? What are your thoughts?
So ESG definitely lends to improved risk management, leading to more stable long-term performance. There's increased efficiencies, attracting and retaining talent, and increased customer loyalty. So ESG has shown to have positive financial benefits to the company. And let's remember that ESG has to be aligned with the strategy of the company as well. So it's integral to that.
Great. Thank you, Katrina. Yes, and certainly, I've read that, with millennials or the Gen Alpha, as they're called now, the new generation, and the generations, they're big on purpose, right? So as Katrina spoke about, attracting talent, persons who want to work for companies, who are big on sustainability. Investors want to do business with companies, especially as we are embarking more so on a global stage. Global companies and investors want to invest in companies who are doing right and have that integrated into how we do our business. All right, so certainly, we will see it redounding, as Katrina was sharing, in all these areas. So let's look at another question. So Katrina, a question I had was, how will we be communicating, our ESG strategy? So we're using this webinar. We've had two as a platform. Can you share with us again, how else will this be communicated as we are working to get everybody on board?
So ESG communication strategy is evolving with our stakeholders' input, and implementing a strategy that communicates back to our stakeholders. It's very important that it's a two-way stream of communication in the co-creation of what that might be, and to have everyone be part of that process. So that is evolving and being worked on.
Okay, great. Thank you, Katrina. Also, I see another question came in. Great, thank you. It means you're tuned in and you're vested. I love this. Another question. What initiatives and practices will be implemented to support ESG integration?
So the portfolios are working on creating their ESG initiatives, which they will be focusing on through engagement with employees and their other stakeholders. And so it's really an opportunity for your voice to co-create those initiatives, to be part of them, to come up with the ideas for what those might be, to be the areas of focus out of the materiality, addressing the topics which are most material to the companies. But I encourage you to join the committees. Either the E, the S, or the G may be the area that you would like to focus on, and to co-create what those initiatives might be.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Katrina. So, so there's a question. If we have any questions or concerns after the webinar, can we call or email Katrina? I can certainly say on her behalf, yes, but I know she will also endorse that. So certainly, we want the questions. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, that would be great. And I just wanted to say that I know that we had one last slide on that point, that are we able to show? So this is, as Audra said, there was an ESG MLI level up last year, which they've put the link to in the chat. And as we evolve the conversation on ESG, we have sponsored the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute is having a session with Janitha John, world-renowned on this topic, next week, Friday. And we have 10 spots which we have sponsored. So for any of you listening in who would like to attend, the first 10 of you to reach out, please. I think we're putting my email address within the chat. Reach out so that if you would like to attend. But there will be other opportunities as well as we collaborate with MLI to really to expand on this topic.
Great, thank you, Katrina. All right, as we go along, we have another question. So different companies are at different stages with ESG. Is the idea to do a gap, sort of like a gap analysis first?
Yes. So as part of the baselining exercise, where we look at data collection for an entire year within each company, the gaps will also be identified as we refine processes for the collection of the data, which eventually will be required for reporting. So this is an opportunity for us to assess our gaps, for sure.
Great. Thank you, Katrina. And you were mentioning the baseline, and I actually wanted to ask if you could have gone back to that slide around the baselining, because there is an example that you shared there, that you could kind of walk us through that.
Sure.
Because I know this whole idea of baselining around ESG is pretty new to persons, so that if you could kind of speak to us through this.
Great. So this is an example of the material topics which will be looked at during the baselining. So for instance, we've all heard about greenhouse greenhouse gas emissions, the importance of evaluating our impact to the environment. And so that was an example that we kind of pulled out here in terms of energy management, the total. So where energy management is the topic that is being assessed here, the metrics which evolve out of that would be total energy incurred, the percentage of electricity used, and that is a quantitative category, which then is, we align on the unit of measure that we report on. For instance, data security is super important to the organization, and so out of data security, specific metrics are pulled out for measurement across the group. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So the next question I wanted to ask was, and I guess it's sort of linked to Shada's question on GAP. So you shared with us, the top 10 global risks, right? The short term and long term. Will we be doing our own assessment, of the risks that directly impact us? Because we do have different businesses, right? So could you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So the materiality assessment in which each company looks at the material risks to their individual companies will be assessed. And so that's part of the materiality stage of the strategy creation. And so exactly as you said, Audra, the material risk to one company will be different to another. In alignment with the company's strategy. And so that is the opportunity to assess with your stakeholders' voices being part of the process and through the Voice of Stakeholders survey as well to identify the risks that are material to that business.
Great. Thank you, Katrina. And we have a question again. So is baselining like a gap analysis? Is that another way of describing it?
I would say that gap analysis is part of the baselining. Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. I'm loving these questions are coming in. Nice. So another question. Are our portfolios and companies on the journey to baseline and on target to meet established timelines for reporting? Are they on the journey to that?
So all of the companies are on the journey, in the journey of baselining. They have all been baselining, and so by September, we would have a full year of baseline data for the companies to then analyze and assess, so that they could then set their targets and priorities and aspirations for ESG.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Roger, for that question. So we have a question from Carol. So do we have targets for these baselining activities, short-term over 2 years? Have these already been set?
So the baselining, sorry. So the baselining exercise looks at what data collection for the way in which we are in operation right now. The setting of the targets will happen at the end of the first year of baselining. So specific numeric targets and the roadmap to achieving those targets is an important part of the next steps.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Now I've seen there's a little slowdown in the questions or comments coming in. You're on a roll. Please continue. We'll love it. We're all learning in this journey. So I will ask my question as we go along. So Katrina, you indicated that we will all play a role. Can you again share with us, that role that you expect us to play, and how do you see it? Just remind us. I know you shared it, but just remind us.
Well, I think a couple things. I think we all have a role in our day-to-day choices as we function within our environments at work, and the choices we make to make sustainable choices, to place people first, to make sure that our governance practices are at the highest standards. But we also play a role very intentionally through the process of ESG strategy creation, where we take part in focus groups to hear for voice of the stakeholder, if you hear about voice of stakeholder surveys or voice of stakeholder focus groups, please take part in them, have your voice be heard in the process, and just engage and collaborate, because this is a collaborative journey.
Great, thank you. I love that. We're co-creating, right? And you know that's it goes with our values of collaborating around it. We're co-creating when we speak about expectations of Massey leaders and expectation of Massey people in general. We're going to co-create this and shape it, very pertinent to Massey and our culture, while ensuring that we're aligned to the requirements. So I have a comment or question, sorry. So I heard James, Group CFO, saying something about ESG strengthening being an important element for accessing capital as part of our global expansion aspirations. Can you say more about that, or maybe email more about that subsequent to the webinar? Are you able to speak to anything on that right now?
I think that impact investing is a huge topic globally. The access to capital directly funded through ESG projects, sustainable development projects, is important and a very current issue. But I will say that we will be having more MLI webinars developing on sort of progressing on governance issues, environmental issues, and that will, I think that's great feedback and that should form part of it. So yes.
Great. Thank you, Katrina. And I remember hearing recently, and by recently I mean early this year, about a company that wanted to do business globally, and they have been turned down, because, it was felt that they weren't strong enough in this ESG, in the work that they had been doing. So it's serious business, right? So certainly I think we want to be ahead of the curve by really ensuring that we strengthen in all our areas, really, so we can access capital and that people really will invest in us as Massey. So thanks for that, Katrina. So let's see, another question. Have we considered potential disruptors in disintegration, and how do we plan to address them? Great question. Any thoughts for you, Katrina?
Have we
considered potential disruptors in this integration? And I'm reading it to mean in integrating ESG into how we operate, how we do business. If I'm interpreting your question incorrectly, you could always post it back. But that's what I'm getting. Have we considered potential disruptors in this integration of ESG into how we do business, and how do we plan to address them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a process, a multi-year process, even with the integration of technology across the group that will help us with data collection and integrating those systems, which would be a huge initiative. I think every company is engaged in this process. It's going to be it's going to be a change in terms of perhaps the technology that we use and the alignment, but I don't think that is specific to Massey. I think it's a global, we're all experiencing it together.
Yes, quite true, quite true. Thanks, Katrina. And as you were sharing, I think that, this is where we'll probably have use a little bit of change management methodology to help with the integrating, a little bit of risk assessments and using risk assessment frameworks, again, to guide this. So I would suspect a little bit of that, plus, in addition to what Katrina said, really is how we're going to do this. But thanks, I really love that question, because we do have to think about potential risk in what we do. I wanted to ask Katrina if she could go back to the slide on materiality, right? Where there was this map at the bottom, and then there was, did you write some buckets around environmental, social, governance? If you could just kind of just explain this map for us.
Sure.
And then tell us what are these areas underneath.
Pull back up the slides. Here we go.
Yes.
Great.
So speak to us a little bit about the mapping that's at the bottom of the page, and then what are those things there? It's environmental, social, governance. So we could
Sure. So with materiality sort of culminates, or one of the tools towards assessing materiality is materiality mapping. So what you're seeing at the bottom here Sorry, I'm looking at it here, which is a little bit bigger for me. But so on the right-hand side are the ESG topics, which in this example, they have identified. So those are the topics which are in the framework from the slides before. So if we just sort of reference these ESG topics that have been identified, and then mapped across the importance to the business and then sort of the importance to the stakeholders. So make sure that the end result in terms of the topics which are material from the angle of mid to long term, provide positive impact on value creation to the business are identified on the top right quadrant. So that's what that is.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that, Katrina. So I'm looking to see if any more comments or questions. Not seeing any. Let me see. Let me take a minute and check. No.
And please remember, everybody, so if any of you are interested in attending Genetha's Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute session next week, Friday, to just reach out to us, and that would be great. But thank you, Audra.
Yes, thank you, Katrina. All right, so let me see. We're just about 11:02. We did to put in some extra time in case there are any additional questions, but as we don't have any other questions or comments, we'll look to wrap up at this time. But please, you got Katrina's email. Please email us if you have any questions, you have any concerns, any additional information you want. Please check in with your companies because, as Katrina said, our companies have started doing that baselining. So if you're not aware of it, you can check in to see where we at with it, what's showing up, how can you help, how can you assist, how can you jump in. So I actually would like to take this opportunity as we begin to wrap up to thank Katrina for sharing this information. It's so timely. Right? As you've seen in this presentation, and Katrina would have alluded to it, without even knowing that it was ESG, we've been on this journey, and Katrina went through the timelines with us, right? And I don't know about you all, but that makes me feel extremely proud because it really aligns with who we say we are as Massey, our philosophy. So we now have an opportunity to build on this foundation that started since 1928 and continue into present. And the idea is for us to begin to integrate this into everything that we do as Massey. So we've come to the end of our webinar. On behalf of the MLI team, I'd like to thank our production team, our tech team. I'd like to thank Katrina, the rest of the MLI team, who in collaboration has made this webinar possible. We want to thank you, your continued attendance, engagement, your questions, your comments, always appreciated. As we say in our Massey song, there's no me without you. Please look out for other upcoming programs and offerings. Let me see if there's anything else I want to tell you. No, I think that is it. So guys, have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you. And as we've said, we are early days in this journey. You may have some questions we may be able to answer, some other things we're figuring out. But remember, we're co-creating. So until next time, remember to level up and please keep safe. Bye, everybody.